As you recall, last year we were able to offer vaccinations for our employees in April, starting in April with their second shot ending up in May. If vaccination's confirmed, then there's no quarantining and yet monitoring for symptoms. And then we'll also this year, like last year, we'll have rapid testing available at the building level. We had this available at our high schools last spring. We'll have it in our buildings, elementary and secondary this year, being available with students with parent permission, of course, and then also for staff. We'll also encourage testing at the UND High Performance Center that's open Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. as well. But we continue to work this initiative with the North Dakota Department of Health as well. Next. So with our staff expectations, again, staff are able to utilize all their leave accruals in no specific order, with the exception of bereavement leave, due to any COVID-related absences. Again, this was similar to last spring as well. I guess the difference this fall is our rate of transmission, right, is very different than it was last spring, and there's much concern with the amount of people quarantining, positive cases, etc. But again, staff are able to utilize all their leave accruals, not just sick, family illness, but all of them in no particular order except for bereavement leave due to COVID-related absences. Efforts will be made also to keep employees working remotely if we have the opportunity. If they need to quarantine, we will be looking at options again this year for that. A little bit different than last year, just with the availability of that online option. Also, Human Resources will keep continuing to track positive cases and COVID-related leaves for our staff, as well as we will be having designated substitute teachers in each of the buildings so that we can fill those absences, similar to how we had last year. Thank you.
And Dr. Brenner asked me to address the impact on learners and families, and we have to remember the families part when quarantining. And I'd like us to harken back a little bit to 2 Marches ago when COVID-19 first hit the world, and we knew much less about the virus then, we have to acknowledge, but I think we can also remember how difficult it was for us to send our children home, and how difficult it was for families to manage the learning of their children at home. I know as adults we can agree or disagree whether or not masks should be required or mandated or whatever terminology you want to use. And I know as adults we can have our opinions to either oppose that sort of a mandate and make up our own decisions, or celebrate that sort of a mandate. But I think the thing that we can all agree upon, regardless of where we stand on the use of masks in this instance, is that kids need to be with teachers in order to learn. Kids need to be with teachers in order to best be taken care of during the school day. That's their needs that go, not only learning needs. Learning is the essence of our mission as a school district, right? But it's also needs such as providing lunch, providing health support. We know very deeply the impact of social and emotional learning and having those connections with peers. And so I think, again, as adults, we want to keep kids in classrooms with teachers. That is our goal, and that is our educational mission. The impact when we don't have that is on learning and learning loss. And one of my wise colleagues said, we really won't know the cost of that until years from now. And so it would behoove us to make every effort right now to ensure that we are progressing our educational mission and having teachers work directly with kids on a daily basis. That learning loss accumulates over time. Again, we've been in this pandemic for way too long. We're all kind of sick of it and ready to get through it, but at the same time, we do have strategies at our disposal that can allow us to progress our educational mission of teaching and learning. Our family work schedules, once again, are impacted. When our youngsters who require adult care are sent home because of quarantining, because of close contacts, there's an adult whose work schedule is typically affected to be there with that learner. we have to make sure that we keep in mind families and the financial stressors that many of our families felt when that was required of them, again, 2 Marches ago, and an on and off basis from last school year. Our teachers, and we all know that teaching is a beautiful profession, the most rewarding profession, but it's also a stressful profession. And just the logistics of managing the ins and the outs and the homes and the back homes and who's providing what instruction and what platform, it really stretched them last year. And our own staff and our own personnel have their own children. So again, when we're trying to prevent situations like what happened last March when we hit a staff level in which we had to send all students home to learn because we didn't have enough adults working with them, we want to be proactive and ensure that our teachers can remain in the classroom, not just because their own health is protected, but also because their children, that they may have to, their personal children, that they may have to care for at home, aren't sent home on quarantine or isolation.
Thank you, Ms. Galatch. In terms of breakfast and lunch and what that will look like, because this is a time that we do demask, and this is a time that students are with each other, perhaps more than 15 minutes at a table. We'll be requesting that students eat in pods, but the beautiful part is they'll have their masks off, and they'll be able to, socialize and see each other, smile, cry, whatever they'd like to do during that time. We'll ask our administrators to maintain seating charts for contact tracing purposes because that will be a difficult one to trace if we don't have kids assigned to pods or certain seating. We'll distance wherever possible, and if we know that we can honor that 6-foot distance in some of our places, then contact tracing would not have to happen. And here's kind of the big one. We want to limit visitors during breakfast and lunch, which is at the elementary level. As a former elementary principal, it's usually a big time for parents to come in and have lunch with their kids. But at this time, with the variant and with the spread, we're going to restrict that until we're in a better place with our data. Next slide, please. So decisions moving forward will continue to be made through our Smart Restart Committee, which meets every week. It includes public health, and we'll continue to look at weekly data at the regional level. We'll analyze that data, and we'll be prepared, and we'll mitigate, and we'll respond, and then we'll move into recovery. And sometimes that will be circular or cyclical because we just don't know what the next thing might be. And we're hoping there's no next thing after the Delta variant. And the other thing I'll say right now is none of us want to have a mask on. None of us want to have a mask on. It seems that there's a perpetuating thing on social media that this is something that the superintendent really enjoys. And I can tell you right now the superintendent doesn't enjoy this at all. It would be my preference that none of us would ever have to wear a mask again. But we want to keep people safe, and that's the reason for the request today. Some of the strategies that we used and refined from last year, how we're going to deal with students who are quarantining and how we make sure that there's still some rigor to the work when they're outside of school, how we can provide outreach and support to families who really depend on us. In other words, how can we use technology to make that experience really rich, because we did learn some things last year, and there might be some new things on the horizon for us as well. And then there's the potential for remoting in for teachers who might still feel well enough to teach. We experienced that last year, and that worked really well. As long as we had supervision in a classroom, then teachers were able to teach remotely. Next slide, please. So the decision making that we'll use will continue to use the Grand Forks County 19 data dashboard. And again, the transmission level is a new data point for us. If people are wondering, well, how long will we have masks on? It's hard to put a defined ending date to that. But my goal would be the sooner we get our masks off, the better for all of us. But we will have data driving those decisions. So right now, we're in the highest transmission level in red. Our community has moved from green to yellow. If we could drop those categories down, then we will continue to look at that from a Smart Restart Committee weekly meeting and make those adjustments. We want to make sure as those data points pivot and drop, and my hope is that things drop, we want to be in those drop zones for 10 days before we make a decision. We don't want to make a hard, fast decision overnight because the colors changed. The other piece is we're hopeful and optimistic that our youngest kids who are not eligible for the vaccine, who are looking forward to it, my son included, when that does become available, we'll probably have more students who will be vaccinated at that pre-K through, at that K through 5 level. Next slide, please. This brings us to the final slide and the administrative recommendation. And the recommendation is for masks to be required for all individuals age 2 or older inside of Grand Forks Public School facilities or Grand Forks Public Schools lease facilities effective Monday, August 23rd, 2021. And again, the recommendation for this purpose, to echo what Ms. Galach said earlier, to take proactive measures to maintain our educational mission of teaching and learning by keeping students and staff in the buildings, as opposed to the possibility of large numbers of quarantining situations, growing learning gaps, and parents missing work. And some of the supporting evidence, I shouldn't say some, the supporting evidence for this would be the health officer's dashboard as of yesterday. We're currently at the yellow level as a community, and the transmission indicators are currently at the highest level. Again, the Smart Restart Committee will continue to meet weekly, monitor community and district-wide COVID data, and will make adjusted recommendations accordingly. And that's our report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Brenner and others. I'm going to switch things around. Usually I open it up right away for questions and comments, and I go last, but I'm going to actually go first this time, and then I'll open it up after that. First, I want to apologize for not being here on Monday. At the beginning of our district calendar year, I picked my vacations the weeks there were no school board meetings, so hence I went on vacation this week and then found out last week we were going to have a meeting on Monday, and I should have, in retrospect, should have just canceled my vacation and stayed here, so I apologize I was not here on Monday. I can tell you there's a lot of rain coming up. I drove in here this morning and I was in nonstop rain, going only 50 miles an hour most of the way from Fargo. So we've got some rain more rain coming. So I apologize for that. I do want to talk a little bit about masks, because we've heard so much about masks from everybody, and I think there's a common misconception out there. The misconception is that masks don't stop the COVID virus, and that's true. It doesn't. If I spew out an isolated COVID virus out of my mouth, this mask will not stop it. But this mask was never designed to stop a small particle like a virus. N95s do a really good job, but they're not even 100%. The purpose of masks is to stop the secretions that are spread. And it sounds gross, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. We're always spewing out small secretion drops, some of them microscopic, some of them a little more than microscopic, all the time. And those secretions in somebody who's infected with COVID-19 will have the virus in it. The purpose of these kinds of masks, the mask Doug's wearing, Dr. Walls is wearing, are designed to stop those secretions from coming out. They aren't going to stop an isolated little virus that's microns in diameter. So the purpose for masks is not to stop 100% of the virus going on. It's to stop those secretions. If you or your family want to be protected completely from COVID and have zero risk, I would suggest you move to Denali in Alaska and be in a bubble, because that's the only way you're going to completely eliminate the risk. What we're talking about, what public health has talked about, what everybody's been talking about since the pandemic, is how do we reduce, how do we mitigate the risk? There's no way to eliminate it completely. And there's no question in my mind that masks work to decrease the risk. They don't eliminate it, but they decrease it. So there's no question in my mind. There's also no question in my mind that there are downside effects of masks. We can't ignore that. There are downside effects of having kids wear masks. I think primarily, and the education experts in the room can tell me more than anything, I think it's the communication issues. There's no question. So I think we need to be aware that there are downsides of masks in addition to benefits of masks. And my philosophy on masks is very similar to my philosophies on vaccinations. We all were asked by the Herald reporter our vaccination status, and I freely told him I was vaccinated. And I told him my philosophy on vaccinations is a simple mathematical equation. What are the risks of getting the vaccination versus what are the risks of getting the disease? And you weigh the two. It's the same thing with masks. What are the risks of wearing the masks? And what are the benefits of wearing the masks? In my mind, there's no question that there are benefits from wearing masks that far outweigh the risks. So what's happened over the last month is we've noticed, like everybody else, our numbers are going up locally. The one thing I do not like about the national media and all that is everybody has a tendency to generalize to their own area. And to be honest, what's been happening in Florida and Texas and Arkansas and Mississippi is not happening in North Dakota. They're going up, but it's not to the degree that it is elsewhere. The concerning thing is now over the last month and especially over the last 2 weeks, the numbers have continued to rise in Grand Forks County, which is our area. And as Dr. Brenner talked about, we're in the red when it comes to transmission. So I'm certainly in favor of mandating masks at this time. I'm also in favor of getting rid of the mandate as soon as we feel the risk has been mitigated and there's less risk. Because, and I'll give you, and I'm sorry I'm so preachy today, but I guess because I was sitting at the lake makes me think about things, reading lots of emails. Here's my philosophy on what's going to happen with COVID, and nobody knows for sure. Nobody in the world knows what's going to happen down the road with COVID-19. But my thoughts, and I mirror a lot of experts' thoughts, is the pandemic is going to go away at some point, and we're going to have endemic COVID-19, which means we're going to have low levels of COVID, like other coronaviruses that cause common colds, like the flu. I doubt it's going to go completely away. It's probably not going to be like smallpox where we can eliminate it. It'll probably be low level, but it's probably going to be here to stay. And when you compare it to influenza, the best way to mitigate our risk for influenza is vaccination. It's vaccination, and it's not going to probably be any different with COVID-19. It's going to be, vaccination is going to be our best weapon to try and minimize the disease as much as possible. Unfortunately, as Dr. Brenner showed with the numbers, and all of you know well through the press, that there's a large part of our population that can't be vaccinated yet with the 12 and under. Unfortunately, there's a fair percentage of people above 12 that haven't been vaccinated, and that will never be vaccinated. But that's their right and choice at this time. So I think I'm certainly in favor of mandating masks right now. I think we should look at when can we go back to being recommended, because I don't think we can say, well, this whole year we're going to be in masks. We don't know. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. We just don't know yet. So I appreciate public health being here. Dr. Walls, I want to thank you. I want to thank your team that's here, but your whole team for all the tireless work that all of you have been done over the last 18 months. Have you guys gotten everything right? No, but we haven't gotten everything right. The CDC hasn't, the federal government, nobody has. What we've done is we've made the best decisions we can make at the time with the information we have. And I can tell you there's a heck of a lot more information now than there was 18 months ago, and so I applaud you for those decisions. And another little fact that most of the board doesn't know, but the health officer before Dr. Walls was Dr. Lunn, and so I kind of know what he's going through. So I didn't have a pandemic during my reign, but we had enough issues of forcing people out of their homes because of hoarding and stuff like that. So again, thank you, Dr. Walls, and thank your team that's here and the rest of the team that's not here. So So I will get off my soapbox, and I will open it up if any board members have any clarifying questions or comments about what's been presented. Bill, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is we talk mask mandate in school. Are we talking no mask at recess if they're outside, or no mask at lunch hour when the kids go out to play?
Thank you, Mr. Palmasino. That would be correct. It's just for inside, and then we would loosen that restriction during lunch, and when they're outside, they're demasked.
My other question is, personally, I just think, we got two sides that are very strong in their feelings, as we read, and I would like us, I know Doug tried last time to set a date that if we decide a mask mandate, that we look at this more in depth at a board meeting, not to say that the committee will come back when it's ready, but we can look at numbers and that, and I'm not, I guess personally, I would think that it's somewhat of a compromise for people that, don't want masks at all, but if we could set a date like October 11th, that would be our first meeting in October. We look at it. Kids are in school for roughly 4 or 5 weeks, and we'll know that, so those are just my feelings.
Thanks, Bill. Other clarifying questions or comments from board members? Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Dr. Lund. I do miss the Mickey Mouse masks, so hopefully that will return. That was always present last year. I just want to address an item that I think that you as our board chair were improperly attacked. Some people believe that this was underhanded, that this was done by you because you thought it important to get your way because you were not available Monday. Knowing you as I do as a leader, as a caring member of this community, I certainly recognize that this meeting was not your doing, rather it was the doing of the committee's work, the facts that are in front of us, and for you to be personally attacked by others is disappointing, yet I would also say that they certainly have that right as an American citizen. However, I do respect your leadership, and I know you would never do something for personal gain.
Thank you for that comment. The one good thing about age is your skin gets really thick, as the orthopedic surgeon who sliced me open last week can tell you. But thank you for that. Other questions or comments? Go ahead, Jeff.
I sort of agree with Bill, too, that we should set a time to come back and look at removing the mask if we have the mask mandate. But instead of a set date, if maybe we're looking at the current level of yellow and high transmission of red. So do we wait, I don't know, a certain number of days until those come back to the green level, and then we say we're going to meet and look at the masking requirements in? Just my...
And to be honest, I think either of those options is very good. I think it should at some point come back to the board with a recommendation from the Smart Restart Committee. But I think the board should and will weigh in on it at some point. So, other questions or comments from board members? Go ahead, Shannon.
One of the reasons I'm sitting so far back is I'm taking a few extra precautions because I'm going to see my 99-year-old grandmother in a assisted living facility next week, and frankly, I don't want to get a close contact letter in the mail or anything like that that would prevent that, since I haven't seen her in 2.5 years. I've said a lot of the things that I think the district has put up on these slideshows already as I think a very logical rationale for a mask mandate. But logic doesn't always persuade individuals to see a different side. And so I took the time to try to engage with individuals that I don't necessarily agree with on a number of different topics, to have them walk me through the train of sentiments around masking and the like. I feel like I've had the opportunity now to understand better the points of emotional drive behind it. I can understand, the severe lack of trust and frustration when the government and other governmental agencies have consistent changes in strategy. And I understand that frustration. I would say every day we encounter things we don't expect to happen, and every day we have an opportunity to make a new choice. And that's one of the beautiful things about being American, is that that is an opportunity, and I think that applies to our governmental experts as well. You know, the other reality that Dr. Brenner pointed out is masks are uncomfortable, generally speaking. I mean, they are. And that's just, I can understand the discomfort and the frustration with having to do something like that is uncomfortable. And I further understand that it is not culturally accepted to have to put a mask on when you're not feeling well in America. So I understand all of those things, and I empathize with all of those things. I've read every email that I've received and responded and tried to take the opportunity to respond to a few of the most divergent opinions. I've been disappointed that some of those discussions, instead of going in a direction of attempting to understand a difference of opinion or a different perspective, have resulted in angry outbursts, an inability to healthy conversation around a disagreement. I don't think that that helps our community. I don't think that that is productive, and I think that is the behavior that none of us would want exhibited to our children. And so I would still invite those individuals that do not agree with a decision of mine, that I'm open to those healthy conversations, but what I'm not open to is threats, veiled threats, and that sort of behavior. So with that said, I appreciate the time and effort that the district has put into presenting this. I hope that the next time that we have this conversation, that it's the same level of detail and thoughtfulness that's been brought forward, because I think we did, as a board and as a district, do a disservice by not having this pulled together earlier. To that end, I 100% empathize with those parents that believed it was going to be recommended. We've now changed the decision. That is a high level of frustration and stress, and if somebody could please respond to those individuals that do want to homeschool their children for their own personal reasons. There are certain waivers and things that have been mentioned. I have not had a chance to look into those since they kind of came to my attention in the last 24 hours. Could somebody please speak to how the district will manage those requests, honor those requests, because that ultimately is a parental choice. And they should have the luxury of making that choice if they deem it to be in the best interest of their child.
Thank you for that, Shannon. I don't know if I can speak to the detail of that, because I just saw the first one recently within today. I think was the first time I saw that. So we'll just have to look at Century Code to see if there's something there that prohibits that. But if there's nothing in Century Code, then we will work with families to make sure that we can make those accommodations. That would be our goal. I don't know if Ms. Galach, Dr. Lewis, if you have any other detail around that. I don't want to put you on the spot.
I think you answered the question very well, Dr. Brenn. Homeschool is always an option for families. There are protocols and paperwork that have to be filled out, and evidence of the curriculum and that sort of thing provided to the district to ensure that the teaching and learning process is taking place at home. So we would just direct them to Linda Steinhaus, as our point person in the district, to walk them through that process, or the information is readily available off of our website.
And I think if people want to know what's going to happen over the next several months, they're not going to find out, because people call it the goalposts are moving. No, the information that we know, the knowledge we know is improving, and the virus pandemic is moving. So even though I voted on August 9th to recommend masks, things have continued to worsen over time, and I wouldn't say that's due to anything the district or the school board or anybody else did. I think things are moving along, and they're going to continue to move along over time. Dr. Lewis, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to anyway, because that's what I do. Your thoughts about, since you're in charge of the elementary schools, of the masks for the kids, and in particular I'm wondering about mask breaks and things like that. I mean, I'm a physician. I've been in a mask 10 hours a day, 5 days a week for 18 months, but I've also grown up around it. 5, 6, 7-year-olds haven't. Is there thought about what we can do for mask breaks besides the current recess and lunch?
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Lund. The most stressful part I achieved, I turned my mic on, so I feel good about that now. My first time it's over, but thank you for that. Ironically, we just had a meeting with elementary principals where we talked just about that very thing this morning. And we talked about the importance of having those mask breaks and how do we do that, not only for the duration of time, but some of our buildings are warmer than others. So just really talking about that the mask isn't, punitive, all those types of pieces, taking those breaks, making, logical choices, talking, working with our teachers individually and families if there's certain situations. It's actually not uncommon for our kiddos that might need a walk to do some regulation, those types of things. And then, of course, having the ability to take those masks off at lunch, take those masks off at recess, those are pieces too. But it's just so important for our kiddos to be able to have that time to take those structured mask breaks, but also to take unstructured time. So if it's not a classroom mask break, obviously there's norms for our students to be able to do that. So we just talked through all of those pieces, and our principals have some really good practices from last year, and it's good timing for our staff meetings on Monday, so they'll be talking through all those points. So great question.
Thank you. Any other board clarifying questions or comments? Doug?
I guess one question I have, and then I have some comments, but there's a couple emails that reference special education students, and I assume that they have exceptions if they have medical necessity and that those will apply just like they have previously. I've seen a lot of nodding heads, so
In fact, we have that in our principal document that we were working through, is really to talk about we have the masks for students that have that in their individualized education plan to not have that. So that's a piece, and that's also not new this year as well. So that's a very good point. So families that have concerns about that, we definitely will work with them if it's not already in their IEP.
okay, thank you. Just a couple other comments. One, I second Chris's comments regarding what I thought were unfair comments about our board president. On Monday night, I voted not to implement masks. And I did that because at that point in time, I felt, based on the numbers that we had in the county, we were at a green level and we were at a substantial transmission rate. I felt comfortable not having a mask mandate. Now, I would have been in support of one for K through 6. If that had happened, because I think that's where our greatest risk lies. But now since Monday, the numbers have substantially changed, and we are in yellow and we are in high transmission. And so I think it's very appropriate for us to implement a mask mandate, and I will vote that way. I also do feel that it's important, as Bill and Jeff have mentioned, that we put a set date to bring this back to the board for consideration. And with the also that we talked about Monday night, that a smart restart has a change in recommendation to go away with masks before that date, that happens. But I think we should set a date where we give the community the opportunity to voice their opinion and us to express why we think it should or shouldn't end at that point in time. So that's where I'm at today.
Thank you, Doug. Amber?
I'll keep my comments brief because I think I said a lot on Monday. And Dr. Lewis was talking about some support systems that we have in place for different circumstances. And I have, like others, have read every single email that we've gotten between January and now on this issue. At times it's been difficult to respond to the length of email and all the questions. But I try my best to understand different opinions, and I've been surprised by maybe what I assume to be the case of someone's opinion and the reasoning behind it. For example, I'm learning that certainly the behaviors of mask wearing among elementary school students and middle school students and high school students differ greatly, and their perceptions of wearing a mask, and the reasons, why there's maybe some different behaviors related to wearing a mask. All I've tried to do during this time is to understand how this board and the district can compromise between the wishes of parents and families. I think, given where we're at, and given what our medical professionals have been telling us, that this is a good compromise. We are not at this time, to my knowledge, restricting visitation other than lunch. We're continuing to have extracurricular activities, which wasn't the case at the beginning of the last school year. So we've moved the needle from the start of last school year till now. And I think there's a small compromise there. What I would remind individuals of is there's always going to be an exception where an individual may have an issue with something, or there's a disagreement on a family preference. And there is a communication channel that can occur, and for parents and families and kids to be heard. It starts with the teacher and then the principals. And I guarantee you that if those communication channels happen, there's likely going to be some sort of accommodation or a conversation where our individuals in the district can meet with those families. We're not saying that this is a hard and fast rule that if your child is on an IEP, it doesn't matter. There are circumstances where maybe a conversation needs to happen, or if your thoughts and feelings about something are negative, there's a channel for that as well. Same with kids. We want to model that example for our kids in the district. What's disappointing to me is something that Shannon alluded to, which is the threats that we've been getting as board members, the threats that we've been getting for rioting and showing up at doors of school. I might remind people that there's been a ton of disruption and sway away from the important thing, which is teaching and learning of our students. And the decisions that we make and the norms that we follow as a board and a district are to adhere and to put teaching and learning at the front and center of all of the decisions that we make. And there may be at times disagreement on how we do that, but I as a board member, and I can guarantee you other board members in the district, are constantly thinking what's in the best interest of kids and their teaching and learning. And again, we might have different ideas on how to get there, but a consistent education where kids are in our classrooms, for me, is the best teaching and learning. And if there's any attempt to disrupt that, that is something that I'm going to speak out against and that I will have a conversation of the district about. There's options for communication and channels for communication if parents or families feel like their child's teaching and learning is disrupted. And I would encourage anyone to utilize those channels. But that's also the point that the board and the district are looking at things from. Again, there may be a disagreement on how we get there, but I hope that these conversations aren't taking away from Wednesday next week when kids are excited to go back into their classrooms. And a lot of the distance learning kids who haven't been in a classroom since March of 2020 are excited to go back to school. And that we can have a really great start to the school year despite being masks, with the hope that at some point those masks will come off and we'll start to have a more normal school year.
Thank you. Any final comments, clarifying questions? Go ahead, Jackie.
I think it's pretty clear if you're watching meetings that I've been on the side of masking for quite some time. And I do think that my employment influences that, as does, things that we all do as board members. We research, we read, we rely on experts, we ask questions, we do those sorts of things. I'm really proud of this board because we've faced a lot of difficult and emotional decisions since I've been on, it feels like. And not all COVID related, but a great deal of it has been COVID related. And one of the things that I know about this board is that I can trust that everybody at this table is reading emails, doing their homework, asking questions of experts, asking questions of educators, reaching out to teachers, reaching out to parents, coming prepared to make decisions on a variety of topics. And when we hold elections for school board members, we pick people who we entrust, that have the education, the experience, that represent us, that are willing to, for very little money, dedicate hours and hours of their time to do this work in the benefit of all people in the district. What I don't sign up for as a board member is to have a parent tell me that their opinion is one thing and then expect that I'm just going to come to the table and do what they want. I take people's opinions into consideration greatly. I have a lot of opinions to balance. So just because I'm elected doesn't mean I'm an elected vote for everything that you think. It means that I'm going to do my homework and I'm going to do the best I can. And so sometimes we're going to completely agree, and sometimes we're going to completely disagree. And, I have kids in the district, and they often hear not so good things about me from other kids because their parents tell them things about me that they disagree with. Hard stuff. Good lesson for my kids, though, that you can disagree with people and still be polite and friendly and treat people with respect. Because I can know that a parent has said awful things about me in front of my kids and then see them at a concert and be polite and shake their hand and be that model for my kids. And I do hope that, as Amber has said, that this does not interfere with giving that lesson to our kids. Kids will either see this as the end of the world, or they'll see it as a compromise, or they'll see it as something that could be good. And it depends on how we frame it, and it depends on how we model things. And if we have disagreements, how we work through those disagreements, the kids are always watching. And so I do hope that, I've heard rumblings of things that I hope do not happen. I hope we're not seeing protests and encouraging kids to walk out of school, or encouraging kids to do things that are going to be disruptive, because I think that's disruptive to those children. I think it's disruptive to other kids as well, and I think it's not going to model the proper way to work through disagreements. And I'm proud of the fact that I have board members that can pull me back. Sometimes I probably would wait half the year before I revisit masks, but I'm perfectly fine with pulling myself back and realizing we can look at the data and maybe have a marker where we come back so many days after we're at certain benchmarks. I'm okay with that.
Thank you. So we have a recommendation from administration. What is the board's? Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to require masks, to mandate masks for the course of the inside all Grand Forks Public School facilities or Grand Forks Public Schools leased facilities, effective Monday, August 23rd. And I will ask that the motion include time to review it as well, if you want that in there. But let me just make that much of a motion.
Do we have a second? Second by Jackie. Further conversation? Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, Dr. Lund. One last thing I wanted to share that I didn't previously to Dr. Walls and those that are in the Department of Health. The many hours that you have given are greatly appreciated. As I have said from the beginning, when Dr. Brenner meets, my decision is based upon the data, the information that is provided. I put a lot of trust in the committee that meets regularly. And so with that information that's been provided this week, I certainly do support and endorse this move.
Go ahead, Shannon.
So I'd like to make the amendment to add in the indicators to bringing this back that Dr. Brenner outlined with, I don't know if you can click to that slide so I can cheat. I don't know which one it was. There you go. Okay, so that any one of these 3 items are triggered, it should probably come back to the board if these are the indicators for not requiring a mask. So I'll make that a motion to amend Cynthia's motion.
We have a second for the motion to amend, second by Jeff. Further questions or comments regarding just the motion to amend? Okay. So voting on just the motion to amend, assuming no roll call vote, all those in favor? Go ahead, Catherine.
Just as a member of the Smart Restart Committee, so what you're saying is, instead of the Smart Restart Committee taking action when these markers are indicated, we would want to convene a board meeting and receive approval from the board before moving forward, or moving backwards in this case, however you want to take a look at it?
That's my understanding. I'll ask the other board member. My understanding is if we meet these parameters and you as a committee recommend going back to just recommending masks, that recommendation would come to the board for approval. Am I correct, Shannon, or not?
Yeah, and so we could probably spend another hour talking about, is it all 3 of these? Is it any one of these? The way I phrased it was any one of these triggers Smart Restart Committee bringing it back to the board with a recommendation that we can discuss, whatever the recommendation that may be, whether it's hold steady, whether it's recommend, move from required to recommend, whatever it is.
Go ahead, Amber. Oh, I thought you were. Go ahead, Doug.
I'm not going to make this as an amendment to that, but I would request that the administration at each board meeting present the information. I know we get an email, but I think for the public to hear and that we focus on it, that the administration bring that report to indicate where we're at that board meeting.
Other comments about the amendment? Seeing none, we're voting on just the Shannon's amendment. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now back to the original motion. Further discussions, comments, questions about that? Seeing none, the motion is to move to mandated masks with the amendment that says it'll come back through the Smart Restart Committee to the board. Assuming a roll call vote, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Aye. Roll call, please.
Carpenter? Douthit?
Yes.
Flynn?
Yes.
Hassett?
Yes.
Manley?
Yes.
Mikula? Yes. Onasino? Shab?
Yes.
Lund?
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no.
Motion carries. Thank you. Before we adjourn, again, I want to thank all our colleagues and friends at Public Health for how they've helped us and how they are going to continue to help us, not only through the pandemic, but all the other things that we work on that people don't have any idea that we're actually working on together. So thank you all. Thank you all, board members, for this special meeting. We are adjourned, and we will see you Monday for the retreat. Thank you.